that, I am thrilled to introduce Mark, who a few months ago I didn't even know existed. So I was lucky enough that Barbara found
Yay.
out about him, and then Barbara told me, and one tells another and another, just like the shampoo commercial used to say. And then here we are, and he agreed to show up here. He has been doing healing for a very, very long time, and so we're just thrilled to have him here and say thank
Yay.
you for being here.
Hi,
Thank you for
Mark.
being here.
I really want to thank Gayla and Barbara for having me here, or even mentioning me. And I also wanted to introduce Sue Hyatt, who's my webmaster and social media person. My name is Mark Earlix, and I am a healer by the grace of God. This is all that I do. I've worked with I guess for the past 49 years now, I've been conscious of this ability to work with healing. I've never gone into other genres. I pretty much just keep it kosher. I keep it clean. And I don't go into all these other things that many people are capable of doing. I just, whenever I get bored with what I do, I just, realize after my boredom fit, I realize that there's more to get into and more to understand. And no matter how deep I go, there's always more. And it's the old man or woman upstairs that I give credit to with all this stuff, or it, whatever you want to call it, higher consciousness, divinity. It doesn't care what we call it, in my perspective of things. So, um, I've worked with approximately, in the 49 years, I've worked with and taught approximately 25 to 35,000 people over the years. And this is it. And I see people by appointments, or in person, or on FaceTime, Zoom, or telephone, and it doesn't matter. Uh, the appointments, when I'm not with you personally, are fantastic, I think, and people tell me as well, and I just relate what they say. I never know what's going to happen. Most people are affected most immediately, regardless whether they're with me or on the other line somewhere. And um, dynamic things happen, whether it be a total healing of something in their life or it's incremental in their life, uh, whether it be 2 days or 5 minutes later, they might experience something, but what they'll experience is change. And what the change is, I don't know. I pretty much, again, leave it to the old man or woman upstairs, as I call it, the boss. And it might be something that someone's going into surgical procedure for in a direful moment of their life. And then uh, the doctor may say, I've had this happen before too. People tell me that uh, their situation, the doctor looked at an x-ray right before the surgical procedure, say, oh my God, what happened to it? If it should be a tumor or an injury of some kind or another, or the doctor will say, I've never seen the tissue cooperate like this before. This is amazing, or something. Uh, you know, I don't know. And when I work with people, the old analogy, some people feel heat or cold, electricity or air moving through them, their muscles or the bones. Some people will feel a little staticky sensation. Some people may go through an emotional catharsis, and that's fine. Um, and I don't take any of that seriously where, oh yeah, this is great, this keep the energy going. Energy is serving a purpose, and it's the life within what I refer to as God. And I like that. So my background is I'm a Gnostic priest, and I've been a priest for many, many, many years, 49 years. And well, first I started off as novice, and then I took my vows, various vows, and then they took me through the priesthood, and then they took me through a mastership, master teacher. But I don't give any of that credence. I just know that in some way I fit into the mind of that divinity. And I believe that we all do. And this is what I teach to people and how to function with that in all my classes. I have online events, workshops. Right now, I'm teaching a class that's going to be starting on the 11th. It's a 4-day class from 11:30 until 1. And it's on soul and light pertaining to our life, the depth of it. And all my classes are unique. Even if I teach the same class, it's going to be different. And my website is markearlix.com. And so I don't know what else to say. Any questions, please? Anything I can try to answer or share with you. I work a lot also with the emotional, and I totally enjoy that. There's some people saying, "Oh, I've been to a psychiatrist or psychologist for 20 years," and or some exaggeration of that. And uh, in 5 minutes, something was taken care of. I try not to interfere with what other psychology or psychiatry practitioners or doctors work with. I don't want to interfere with that. I know medical practice has its purpose. It's by God as well, and I acknowledge that totally. So, please, questions or anything I can try to answer.
Okay, I will start off with a question. I've always said that doctors are good for broken bones and gaping wounds.
Awesome.
Um, because yes, that is a great idea. So is there, if somebody came to you and said, I would like help with this particular thing, is there a particular thing you would say, oh no, I'm going to throw my hands up and say, no, I can't do that? Because I get the idea that you figured you would try anything. Is that true?
That's true. Yes, I will work with anything. And I've worked with weeping wounds. I a short story. Some people in Washington State had me out to do a workshop, and um, the family's cooking dinner, and they just told me to sit on the side and watch because I'm not capable of chefing, and they were. So the mother and the father, Don and Sarah, were in one corner doing their things in separate corners, and in the preparation of the food, and the daughter was at the counter cutting mushrooms, and then the knife slipped from her and slit her leg. It was super, super sharp knife, and it was just bleeding all over the place. She yelled, "Oh!" like that, and everyone's looking and they're freaking out. And I jumped over there, and her leg was just totally bleeding a lot. And so Sarah went to get Don's just standing there not knowing what to do, and Sarah went to get a cold rag of water or whatever. And um, and then I just put my hands on her knee, and what I did was just looking deep within myself in what I refer to as prayer. Prayer is every word, every thought, every action. That's our living prayer. No exceptions to that in our life. It's a prayer. Every word, every thought, every action is a living prayer. So I went within myself to that prayer, and I watched it become more whole. And I watched at what was shown to me as I was watching it. It was like knitting together. And I got my indications and stopped, and I took my hands away, and it was a tiny little scab that was there, and no more bleeding or anything else. And everyone just looked at me, and I said, "Oh boy!" And I kind of stepped back. So, and no one talked to me after that about that. So, a lot of stuff like this happens. Uh, there's so it's with anything really. And I know that something is happening. Change is always happening in the person's life, and that's all that matters to me. I don't go for the dramatics anymore of show and tell, and that's what I prefer. I just know something's happening. There was a woman in the Healing Circle in Chicago. that brought her mother, her 85-year-old mother from Israel to see me. And her mother had this back that the finest of neurologists weren't able to help her in her spinal condition. They couldn't tell what it was. The drugs wouldn't help her. Nothing would help. She was always in pain. And she brought her up, and she was translating for her mother, who was speaking Hebrew. And she was saying that the condition that her back was in, her mother's back was in. And so I said, okay, let me try to find this. So I started to scan her, and I got down to the age of 5, and which I teach in my workshops and everything. And it's always 100% correct so far out of all these years of working with this stuff. And as I was getting down there, I saw where all the energy was coming from. And I kept saying, what is this? What is this inside myself? And then I was able to see her in a 3-story apartment building with um, a wooden balcony, and her friends downstairs. There were 2 or 3 friends that were saying, "Hey, come on down, come on down." So she ran down, and her mother says, "Don't tear your dress, or injure yourself, or fall, or rip your dress, or anything." And she says, "I won't, Mom." And then she got down, and her friends are at the end of the alley and said, "Come on, come on." So she started running towards her friend, this little 5-year-old girl, and they had a rope and they pulled it, and she fell and broke her, or tore her dress, and she injured herself. And so I worked with her. I told her that what I said, I got it, I saw it. And so I told her, and then she started crying, and her skin, her muscles, everywhere in her body were quivering all over the place. And then it stopped, and she told me that she remembered everything and how that had happened, and really brought her into a distraught state. And she did tear her dress, but which changed her life after that. But she had a massive headache, and the headache went away. She'd been carrying that headache for all those years, from 85 years of age all the way since the age of 5. And so that kind of thing works. Sometimes I'll perceive something, and not as a psychic. I don't want to be psychic. Sometimes I'll be a seer, and I'll perceive causes of things, and that's it. But it's only a certain aspect of that cause that created everything from thereafter in life, and kept crescendoing into more, into more, into more. There was another woman that brought her elderly mother, and um, she was having a lot of neurological problems as well. And I started working with her. This was at another circle. And as I worked with her, I scanned down also to the age of 5. And I kept wondering, what is this? And I kept going deeper within myself to wonder what it was. Wondering is the key. Wondering is the key to everything, of my perceptions of what comes to me, what the teachings that I say. Everything is just based upon wondering. So even in meditation, we wonder about things. When we're wondering about things in life, we're also in the shower or doing the dishes. All of a sudden, we have an aha moment. It's because we wondered about something for a moment or a little bit longer. And we won't get an answer until we let go of it. And that's the procedure of wondering. We get information in an aha moment. That's what it is. So here's this woman in front of me, and I'm wondering about it. What is this? What is this? It's causing her all this distress in life, in her spine, and in her head. And I saw her as a 5-year-old girl, and her friends were they were living near this forested area, and her friends were coaxing her, "Come on, jump over this little stream like they did." And they're saying, "Come on, come on." And so she got out of her fear for a moment, and she jumped and she slipped on a rock, and it was magnetic. And in this magnetic rock, uh, it changed her uh, neurology somehow. And so I worked with that, and she no longer had the spinal condition or the headaches after that, something that neurology wasn't able to address for some reason or another. Her electrical magnetic system was kind of shifted into a balance of what it could be, and that was fine. So these things are working, and it creates change in someone, whether they're agnostic or existentialist or a non-believer in some way or another. It doesn't matter. The godliness, the divinity inside is what does it all. And that's all that matters to me. Good question, though, Gayla. Good question. Yeah,
Well, thank you. You know what I always say is you don't have to believe in gravity for it to work either. It just works. It does. You
it
can say you
does.
don't. There are times I wish it didn't because I'm of the age where I'd rather it wasn't. Does anybody have any questions, or if would you like to put them in the chat
Please,
rather than say them
anything.
out loud? Because I know I have another question. So I'll say put your stuff in the chat if you don't want to say it out loud. Um, tell us, would you mind telling us the story about how you found out that you had this gift?
Yes.
I can't be the first one that asked that, so I know I'm not.
I just got out of Vietnam, and I was in pretty direful state in my life. And I'll give you a shortened version, but it's a good one. And and then I didn't know what I was going to be doing in my life, and I had just about given up in life. And then uh, I met two people. They offered me a ride to the laundromat, and they saw me walking down the street with my duffel bag. I was in Arizona at the time, and uh, I didn't want to get in the car at first. I said, "Leave me alone," and they kept insisting, "Well, get on in, going in. We'll give you a ride to the laundromat." And so I finally got into the car, and I didn't want to talk to them, but the driver started telling me uh, about my life. And I'm figuring I'd never seen this woman before. How can she know anything about me? And she kept going and going and going. And the passenger, she, was just giggling the whole time, thought this was a great, funny thing. So here they are. The driver was just kept talking, telling me all about my life, from everything from childhood all the way up to the current. And then I turned my head and I saw we were passing a laundromat. And I said, "Let me out. I got to, get my laundry done." And he said, "No, we're going to take you to get something to eat." And I said, "I don't want. I'm not hungry." They said, "Well, we're going to take you anyway. Don't worry about that." And they said, "We're going to get there's a really great Mexican restaurant up there called La Cucaracha, of all places." And so I said, "I hate Mexican food." And he says, "Oh, you'll love this." And so they took me there. I said, "I don't have any money." They said, "Don't worry, we're going to pay for it." So I ended up having the best chimichangas of my life ever since then. And it was amazing. And so I ended up staying with them. And then one day they came up to me about 6 months ago. They got me a job, everything. And at an optical lab making glasses. And then one day they said, "Okay, we're leaving." I said, "What are you talking about? You're leaving?" And it was about 6 months later, 9 months, something like that. And I said, "I'm going with you wherever you're going." They said, "Oh, okay." And so we ended up going to California, and they told me that they were part of an order. And they would say nothing about this the entire time until that day. Yeah, I knew nothing about it. So I said, "Okay, I'm going too." And I didn't know what an order was. I was not religious in any way or another, and I didn't care about religion, and I hated God with all my life. And I even wrote poetry that was published one time in some university book. and how much I hated God. And so here I am in the waiting lobby with a bunch of other people, and the receptionist says, "Okay, it's your time to go up in front of this group of people, and to see if you're going to get in or not." I said, "Okay." And I had no fear about anything. So I walked she took me upstairs to the third floor. I walked in front of me was literally a sea of what I refer to now as priests and teachers. And there, it was like a Sprint commercial. It was totally silent. And there was a little old man who looked like Mr. Magoo sitting at a desk with a pipe in his mouth, and he's puffing on. And he says, "Welcome. What's your name?" And I told him. And he said, "What religion are you?" I said, "Jewish." He says, "Oh, we got a lot of Jewish people here. You'll like it." And I didn't say that I was going to be there or stay there or anything. And he started saying, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I looked at him and I said, "I don't know." And everyone was silent. And then all of a sudden, I found myself going deeper and deeper inside of myself, which I had never done in my life. And I saw myself in all these little cells that looked like they were maybe 6 by 10. And it wasn't furniture in there, wasn't anything. They were just empty. And every single cell I went through, there were about 10 to 15 of them. As I went through them, I kept saying, "I don't know. I don't know." Then after a while, he says, "Okay, we believe you now." And he introduced me to my teacher who was out in the with all these other people. And uh, his name was John. And John said, "Come over here." So I went over in between all these people, and he took me to the window. He says, "See that little door down there, the wooden door?" So yeah, he says, "That's the chapel. You're going to go there and kneel before the Mary Shrine, and in a little while, we're going to get you something to eat and show you where you're going to be sleeping." I said, "Okay." So I bopped downstairs and I knocked on the door. There was this brother who came to the door, and he says, "Yeah." I said, "I was just up there. They told me to come down here and kneel before the Mary Shrine. Then we're going to get me something to eat and show me where I'm going to be sleeping." So he says, "Okay, you don't have to knock. This is a chapel." And so I went in and he started to leave. And I said, "Where's the Mary Shrine?" And he looked at me real oddly and he pointed over there. Said, "Thanks." And he said, "Anything else?" I said, "Yeah, how do you kneel?" What do what is the kneeling stuff? And he got all huffy and puffy and he says, "Come here, I'll show you." And so he kneeled for me in front of this Mary Shrine. And um, he didn't ask me if there was anything else after that. So I kneeled there for a while, and there was this real fine cloth with a red glass and a candle inside of it, and flowers to the left of that. And there was a picture of this woman with a veil over her head. It looked like she was looking at me, and I kept turning the picture where I wouldn't get that, feel or sensation or sight of that, but it wouldn't go away. And then I kept blowing out the candle, lighting it again, blowing it out, and lighting it again, and picking the petals off the rose and putting them in my pocket. And all of a sudden, I got very tired. I started to put my head down on the cloth, thinking that I heard the door creak. And as I heard the door creak, I knew that if someone came in, that I would, be conscious enough. I'd wake up. And so, um, as I started to put my head down, I found myself looking at what looked like an old English countryside with these tall hedges to create a maze. But it went on forever, just nonstop all around me. And then I found myself somewhere in that maze looking I was in a little grassy knoll area, and in front of me was a 10-foot or 15-foot wide brown earthen road. Excuse me. And I get hoarse, I'm sorry. And as I was looking at this road in front of me, to the left, the road led into an alcove that went into this lush, dark green forest. that you couldn't see into. It was so dark and lush. And then to the right, it led into what looked like a monastic structure that was handmade with stone. And on the front of it was a drawbridge that came down like it should cover a moat, but there was no water there. And the door came down, and a procession of monks came out, 4 deep and 10 long, and they all had their hoods over their heads and their arms in their sleeves like this, and their you couldn't see their feet or anything. And they all started to pass me to go into this alcove, and there was this third deep in the row stepped out, took his arms out of his sleeve, put his hood back, and it was this lovely, beautiful looking man with jet black hair and eyes that just, it was like a lump of coal that was so shiny you could see into it forever. And he came up to me and he introduced himself to me. And I told him my name. And then a it was almost like a Chicago park bench with real thin green slats of wood with ornate wrought iron around it. We sat down on it, and he started asking me questions about healing, and I started asking him questions, and it kept going back and forth and back and forth. And then a uh, then the procession came back, and he went back into his place, and they all went in, and the ramp door went back up. Then someone tapped me on the shoulder, and I swung my head around, and there was this funky looking brother there. And he says, "Sorry, I'm late. I'm going to be showing you where you're going to be sleeping and get you something to eat." I say, "Cool." I just thought I came out of the greatest hallucination of my life. Then the next morning, I woke up at 6, and I didn't know if I was going to stay there or leave or start thumbing it around the country, whatever. And it was around 6 in the morning. I'm walking around the building, and about maybe 25, 50 feet away was this street bum, this indigent that was coming real briskly up to me, and no one else was around. And I said, okay, this guy's either going to shoot me, knife me, stab me, swear at me, do something vile, whatever. And so he was walking. So I started puffing myself up, and I'm going to knock this guy out before he does anything. So he comes right up to me, and he's looking at me in my eyes, and I'm looking at him. And he said, "Put your hands on my head." I said, "What?" And he had a greasy, tattered clothing, unshaven, unkept demeanor to him. And he's shorter than me. And so I felt compelled to put my hands on his head. And then I felt a weird sensation, and I didn't know if it was the heat of the day or the altitude or whatever. And it lasted for about 5 or 7 seconds. And then he said, "Take your hands down." And I took my hands down, and he said, "Thanks for taking my headache away." And he walked away. I never saw him again. And it was later that day that I still hadn't made up my mind if I was going to stay or leave. Sometime in around after lunch, there was a bunch of people milling around, and I was on the steps of this 3-story building. And he said, someone came up to me, this really tall dude, a brother, and I'm looking up at him, and he's looking down at me, and he starts saying, "I have a headache." I said, "What?" He said, "I have a headache." I said, "Take some aspirin." And he said it again, "I get a headache." I said, "Take some aspirin." And then I remembered what had happened earlier that day with that street bum. And I remembered what had happened that evening prior. I said, "Can I try something really weird with you?" He says, "Yep." And so I was up on my toes. I put my hands on his head. I felt the same sensation again. And I was just compelled to do that. And it left after a few seconds. And he says, "How in the hell did you do that?" And I said, "Why in the hell did you ask me to?" And that was that's where everything started, basically. Good question. Long story, but thank you for that.
Well, so it's not anything you were ever looking for. It just
Nothing.
it found you. You didn't find it.
No,
It's yeah. Well,
not at all.
Barbara has written in the chat. She says, "What keeps
Keeps
people
people
stuck
stuck.
in their illnesses?" So
Uh,
that's
I
a big question too.
Yes. oftentimes, and this is what it's not for everyone, but it's for some people. There's so many scenarios that bring us into who we are, what we are, why we are today. It's unlimited. Oftentimes it's emotional, sometimes it's physiological, sometimes it's biological, what we're born into. Uh, in one enzyme alone, there's a potential for at least 1,000 defects that each person is born with in one enzyme alone. And these are potentials for us. And most people throughout our life will have maybe two or five of these dynamics that will be prone for. And it's almost like the soul carries this information of what we have to work out. And that's exactly what it is of things, accepting for accidents. Accidents do happen at times, and or situations where at the wrong time in the wrong place, someone comes along that also wasn't planned on by the universe of being there. And so, but the soul, what happens is it'll pick up that and pertain to our life of what we're here to work with and get over with. So sometimes these things, it'll be physiological stuff, or other times it'll be emotional stuff that we're working out. If that almost answers your question. Uh, and it what keeps us stuck is getting our proof that this is real. Say like, guys
Mhm.
will say, "Oh, give me a knuckle sandwich," or "I'm going to give you a knuckle sandwich," and all of a sudden we have, a discomfort or hurt or pain. It's a shock trauma to our systems, and or also in our emotional and mental perceptions. It'll be a shock trauma to us. And what happens is later, and the guy wants to hold it in and show how tough he is, and how rough and tough this guy is, whatever. And so he'll hold it in, and maybe a couple days later, or a couple months later, or a couple weeks later, or whatever, years later, something else happens where there'll be an elaboration on it. Um, Even 50 years later, all of a sudden we start to have the discomforts that we buried within us that are enmeshed within our tissue, our bone, the memory, beneath the dura, whatever. We have that within us. And we keep getting proof of our patterns that, oh, this must be real. This is the way life really is. And that perpetuates as well. That's why we often get stuck. Those patterns that keep repeating say, okay, this is really the way it is because it happened again in some other way. So that's what creates the loop for that uh, being our proof. That's what we're stuck in. That's one scenario. If that almost helps, Barbara. Our parents
That makes
arguing. Yeah.
that makes perfect sense to me. We have something happen once, and so then it'll be on our radar to find it again and say,
And
okay,
it's going to
there's
happen
my
again,
validation.
inevitably.
There's
Yes.
my validation. So let's say that we wanted to, because we didn't know you yet, that we wanted to let go of it ourselves and on our own. What advice would you give to someone who says, you know what, I'm just really tired of this insert complaint here? I'll say, you know what, I have ADHD. Boy, life would be easier if I didn't have 100 things going on at once. So, where did that come from? I don't know. So let's say again that I didn't know you. What advice would you give someone about how to get in touch with the roots of what is going on with them? Or is that a bad question?
Oftentimes, when we want to get to roots, I don't know about ADHD pertaining to this particular thing, but uh, generally, when someone comes to me with a pattern of life, what I recommend to people and what I teach people how to do is to stop ourselves and face. Is picturing when you had the situation happen to you, emotional dilemma that you're repeating in life, or just apply it to emotional because there's too many scenarios. So it's taking that dilemma, drama, or trauma in your life and saying, okay, where did I learn this? And it's stopping yourself being objectively observant, which is the most difficult thing in the world to do. Being objectively observant without the emotion and without the reaction of it, by being emotionally non-reactive and observant without any emotion involved in that. It's being like an alien looking at yourself. And where did I learn this particular pattern? And give the pattern a form like a globule or something. Because it's not a man, it's not a woman, it's not a child, it's nothing. It's a pattern within us if we want to curtail a pattern. And where did I learn this? And you're taking that pattern, excuse me, and you're taking that pattern that you're witnessing, and that's what it is. It's witnessing it, it's seeing it objectively and observantly. Where did I have this last? And if we can ask ourselves, where did I have this last? You'll get a sight of when you had it the last time. And then you can see all of a sudden, if you're curious enough and really deep within yourself, okay, where did I have it before that? Then all of a sudden, you'll see throughout the years where you had it in various forms last, and you can finally come to a approximate causal scenario within yourself. As soon as you can see it objectively and observantly in its reality of where you learned that, then the pattern is broken. It won't be able to repeat itself. It can't. We find out also that we're really living in the past, which is not possible, but we're trying to replicate it in our lives. We live with these stories, we live with the loops, we live with the the destructive patterns within ourselves. And there's so many of them. There's no perfect person. None. We're always meeting ourselves. And we can feel it within ourselves. We can see it within ourselves in our interactions with others, all kinds of scenarios. That's just the way we're built to do that. And the soul is always going to present to us of what we're here to recognize, recognize. I hope that almost makes sense.
You
Um,
know, that makes so much sense to me. Once you take the emotion out of it, because that's the trick. That's the, and as you said, the hardest thing to do is
it's
to
the most
just look at
difficult thing in
it.
the world. Yes.
It's to take the emotion out of something what was a traumatic event, and then just see it.
That's powerful. We're trying to live in the past. So how do we let it go? By recognition, recognizing, by witnessing what pattern we're living in. Where did I learn this? That's the greatest question. And being objectively observant. Where did I learn this? That's letting go. And that's giving yourself room. Once you recognize where it is, you've broken the pattern for that particular aspect of whatever your demise should be. Where did I learn this? So important. It's too simple, but it's most difficult to get to that simplicity.
Someone asks, is your book "Awakening the Healer Within" about learning to heal ourselves, others, or both?
Both, both. And the audiobook, that's also available uh, on Amazon as well. Awaken the Healer Within. It's like a training process for yourself and for other people. It's really dynamic, and it gives a lot of deep explanation and understandings as well, and techniques that you can use. I try to make it so that people can just do this stuff according to their needs and their ways of doing things, according to their personalities, what they've been brought up with. And everyone is unique and everyone is different and going to perceive differently. But I try to make the book for that process of each person. All right.
And that's
So
great. And I'm going to say that your book is our June selection, because
cool.
this year we are featuring local as in Arizona authors. So we're really blessed for that. And I will tell everyone that's here, if you can't afford Mark's book, send me an email and our safe space will buy it for you.
Awesome.
That is our new program that will do that. I don't want healing of any kind to be stuck just because you didn't have a couple dollars. That's what we're here for.
All
We
right.
have one more last
Question
comment
here.
in the, what does it say? Can we go around sending healing to people? I've heard you can't inflict healing on others, but do we have to get permission before sending healing? Well,
What a
that's a good
story
question.
someone told us one time, or someone else read and told someone else about, someone else about. Every word, every thought, every action is our living prayer. We're always talking with other people. We're always saying hello to people. That's a blessing to them. When you're raising your right hand or whatever, that's a blessing to people. You're always thinking of other people, and it's a living prayer within us. It's not wrong to do good, no matter whether you have so-called permissions or not. When someone talks to you and tells you, "Oh, I heard Ann was sick," and so you're going to have a impression in your head of someone sick. That's a prayer. Well, we have the opportunity to see them otherwise and in another state of being. And that's also a prayer. We get to choose all day long, every single day of our life. When we hear or see people or wish things upon people, that's a prayer. We're always saying it anyway. Why do we need someone's permission? If we did, then we wouldn't think of anyone. So we have lives that we're a part of this world, and we get to have every word, every thought, every action to be a living prayer within us. The more conscious we become of it, the more empowered we become with it. How awesome.
That, that's marvelous. What a wonderful way to end. Because I believe, just a different way of saying what you said is that we are all
Right, DC.
connected. We
Yes,
are all connected.
we're all
And
teaming
what
together and we're contributing to their demise or the destruction or construction.
Yeah, yeah. So that's spectacular. Well, our time is up, and I want to remind everybody that because I don't think I said this out loud in the beginning, that Mark has a healing circle every Tuesday night online, and
Yes.
the link is in the chat, and believe it's you correct me if I'm wrong. It's a smallish group usually. Is that
Yes.
true?
Yes.
Smallish.
Every other Monday is what's called the gathering, where people get to ask me questions about spirituality, about their life, or whatever. And I'll go as deep as I can to answer their questions about them. And some questions get pretty intense. They're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Great. And all of this is on your website. And do you, and you also have a Facebook page and a meetup
Yes.
group. Am I right about the meetup group?
Yes, and also you can go to the website and the meetup groups are there as well,
Mhm.
markearlix.com. And also, what else is there? The workshops, please feel free, and if you need help attending financially, I can give you a good break. I'd love to if you need that. Uh, uh, People do feel free to uh, say for gifting. That helps people who don't have, and that helps us to continue what we're doing. Uh, so,
Great. All right. Well, I'm going to say one more time, thank you so much for doing this. This is magnificent. We are so happy. You know what I'm going to, my final gift to you is I'm going to take the spotlight off as soon as I figure out how to do that. Look at that.
yay!
That is my gift to you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
and thank you for being here. I know that you touched everybody's heart here because I could feel that.
my
Oh,
last words, love your life. Honest to
um,
God, love your life. There's something that's greater that loves you. That's why we're alive. We're here to experience that. Love your life.
great.